Good afternoon, fractionally late, that's unlike me. It is Kate Carruth, your content alchemist with some content gold on a Wednesday lunchtime. We have been talking over the last 6 weeks about writing a book. So we've talked about planning for a book, we've talked about fiction and non-fiction, we've talked about editing, we've talked about publishing. What have we missed out? The bit in the middle, the actual getting organised to do the writing. So today that's what I'm going to cover. 5 things you need to know to make sure you actually get the writing done. So, what's the first thing you need to do? Something I talked about right the way back in part 1 about achieving your ambition was making sure that you have the discipline of writing every single day. And that means finding the time to write. Take a look at your diary and find a slot in every single day, the same time every day if you possibly can, or the right time for you in particular days in order to do the writing. Writing is a skill, it is a discipline, so you need to make sure you're setting that time aside to do your writing. Number 1. Number 2, plan. Plan your work. So whether you are talking about fiction, which we covered in part 2, or whether you're dealing with non-fiction, which we covered in part 3, it's really helpful to have a plan. Know where your plot is going, know where the structure of the book is going. So invest time in that planning process and creating an outline so that you've got something to work towards. That means if you ever get stuck on one section, you can say, okay, we'll set that aside and we'll go and do something in another. Number 2, plan your work. Number 3, take twice as long and plan twice as long for the reviewing and editing as you plan for the writing. So if you say, I'm going to write 5,000 words every day and my book is 100,000 words long, that's 100,000 divided by 5, so that's 20 weeks. You need to allow for the fact that you're going to need to create twice as long to do the polishing, the editing and getting it ready to go. And however eager you are to get to that all-important publishing, which we covered in part 5, do not rush it. If you rush it, all that happens is when your published book gets out there, you'll spot the mistakes that you made and you'll wish you'd taken more time. Do spend time on this stage. Number 4, she says, losing count rapidly. I'm a writer, not a counter. Do make a decision about the publication route quite early on. If, for example, you wanted traditional publishing, you can start approaching publishers before the book is finished. You can send them, as long as you've got a sample of the work that meets their criteria, and we talked about that in part 5, how you would go about that, you can start sending that out to people and start approaching them, because then if you know that you have got a traditional publisher on board, they're going to be able to help you write from early on. If you know you are self-publishing, you can start making inroads into the process of creating your own book. And you can also start doing some marketing around it, because you know you can set for yourself when your publication date is. So decide that route quite early on in your writing process. And number 5, the most important one of all, get help and support. So you are the only person who can write your book. But that doesn't mean you have to go it alone. There are loads of online communities, there's lots of aspiring authors you can tap into, there are loads of help that you can get. And you can actually, for some of the parts of the process, you can even get coaches, you can get someone to subcontract to you to provide, say, editing services. Those are all things that are out there that are available to you. And there are loads of tools as well. I happen to use OneNote, some people use Scrivener, which is another writing tool. Lots of ways to organise your ideas and get organised. So that's your 5. Create the time to write, plan your work, take twice as long in the editing process as in the writing, decide early on how you're going to get published, and get help and support. That's it from this series. We're going to be moving on to the very important topic for any small business of content on your website. That's going to be our new series coming up in 2 weeks' time. I hope you found this series on writing a book has been helpful. If you know of anyone who's thinking of writing a book, then share this post or tag them in the comments below so that they can have a watch, and then they can go back over the series and see what will help them. So I'll be back in 2 weeks. Have a great day and have a golden afternoon. See you soon.